Revolution? Is it time? Revolution comes from the Latin word revolutio, a turnaround. It is a fundamental change in power or organizational structures that takes place in a relatively short period of time. A change of government usually brought about by the people, oftentimes by force, or civil unrest. Rarely, but possibly brought on by the way of a vote, that removes the leaders and replaces them with others. According to our forefathers, a revolution by the way of a vote, from time to time, is a good thing. It removes the old professional lifelong politicians, and replaces them with those who respect the Constitution and the will of the people. However, our forefathers also knew that this option does not always work when dealing with those who place themselves above the people with the mindset to rule over them. So, in their wisdom, they gave us the Second Amendment to the Constitution of the United States of America. The Second Amendment was placed as number 2 for a reason, to protect the First Amendment, and in doing that, protecting them all. The Second Amendment is without a doubt the most important. The right to keep and bear arms, the means to protect yourself and our country. It was one of the first things Britain tried to take away from the colonies. Yeah, England tried to strip the colonies of their guns. Our American Revolution with Britain had several factors. The war between Britain and France ended with the victorious British deeply in debt and demanding more revenue from the colonies. Britain began taxing the colonies to the point that they could not feed their own families. When the amount of taxes paid became an overburden, King George sent troops to enforce the taxation. Basically, they took everything the colonies had, to pay for the war with France. I remember several of years ago my father told me that a man only has two things to offer, when it gets right down to it, his labor and his honesty. He continued by saying, when this hard-working man can no longer supply the needs of his family or feed his children because of high taxes and government control, then it is time for a new revolution. The colonists claimed that, as they were British subjects, imposing laws and parliament upon the colonists, and particularly taxation without representation, was illegal. The American colonists formed a unifying Continental Congress and a shadow government in each colony, though at first wishing to remain in the empire and loyal to the crown. When Britain sent more troops to confiscate land and supplies, and upped the taxes yet again, independence soon became the battle cry. The colonies pleaded with the king to ease the high taxes, and many began to revolt, and decided to take a stand against Britain by refusing to pay tariffs and taxes. We all know about this, the Boston Tea Party, etc. The American boycott of taxed British tea led to the Boston Tea Party in 1773, when shiploads of tea were destroyed. London responded by ending self-government in Massachusetts and putting it under the control of the British Army with General Thomas Gage as governor. We now call this action martial law. In April 1775, Gage learned that weapons were being gathered in Concord, and he sent British troops to seize and destroy them. A militia was formed to stop the British from seizing the weapons, and the first shots were fired. Several died on both sides, but the guns stayed in the hands of the Massachusetts militia. After repeated pleas to the British monarchy for intervention with Parliament, any chance of a compromise ended when the Congress were declared traitors by royal decree, and they responded by declaring the independence of a new sovereign nation, the United States of America, on July 4, 1776. The revolution had begun. The colonies revolted by declaring independence, and Britain committed treason by attacking its own citizens, the 13 colonies. From this point on, they referred to themselves as Americans. The policies of taking from one and giving it to another, overtaxation, government doing as it pleased and disregarding the voice of the people, the disarming of those who had the right to be armed, the confiscation of property, the king's way or no way, unjust laws against a selected group of people, the removal of liberty and freedom, and the use of force all lead to the American Revolution. Sound familiar? Seeking to coordinate military efforts, prior to the Revolution, the Continental Congress established a regular army on June 14, 1775, and appointed George Washington as Commander-in-Chief. The development of the Continental Army was always a work in progress, and Washington used both his regulars and state militia throughout the Revolutionary War. The United States Marine Corps traces its institutional roots to the Continental Marines of the War, formed at Hun Tavern in Philadelphia, by a resolution of the Continental Congress on November 10, 1775, a date regarded and celebrated as the birthday of the Marine Corps. The Marines also played a crucial part in our revolution against England. At the beginning of 1776, Washington's army had 20,000 men, with 2/3 enlisted in the Continental Army and the other third in the various state militias. At the end of the American Revolution in 1783, both the Continental Navy and Continental Marines were disbanded. About 250,000 men served as regulars or as militiamen for the revolutionary cause in the 8 years of the war, but there were never more than 90,000 men under arms at one time. I mention this to remind our military why they were formed, the reason for their establishment. Our military, plain and simple, were formed to protect and serve the people, not the government. To ensure the rights of the people, to protect the people from a tyrannical government, to protect America from enemies both foreign and domestic, and to assist, train, and guide the militia. The rights of the people shall not be infringed. It is the duty of our military to make sure this does not happen again. It is hard to keep this short and sweet. So many things took place leading up to our American Revolution, so many things that we see happening today. The revolutionary vote has not worked as planned, but there are more elections to come, I hope. So, when do we go to the next step? Or, do we even have to go to the next step? It has been said, when you have given all that you have, the only thing left to give is revolution.